The sea does not care who you are. It doesn't care if you are a king or a beggar, merchant or murderer. Out there, beyond the sight of land, lies the seven seas, a merciless expanse. For many centuries, the oceans surrounding Britain were roads to empire, great wooden arteries carrying gold, spices, weapons, slaves, and war across the world. And wherever wealth travels, predators follow. Lovable rogues to some, scoundrels to others, there are few figures more mythologized than the pirates. A life seemingly of adventure and freedom, black flags cutting through the tropical sea mist. But the truth was far darker. Pirates were not heroes, nor were they harmless swashbucklers chasing fortune beneath the sun. They were the products of violence, of empire, and of war. Men hardened by brutal naval life. Men abandoned when wars ended. Men that decided their time was not just yet done on the decree of a monarch. Men who looked upon the vastness of the ocean and realised that beyond the reach of kings, a different kind of power could exist. The pirate ship became its own kingdom and its own law, and its own damnation. Pirate ships were not homogeneous in the same way a naval ship might be, which would be enforced by rules and discipline. And among these ships were outlaws, names that would become immortal, not because they were good men, but because they had become something larger than themselves. And there were many names: the devil of the Atlantic, the gentleman pirate, the drunken rogue whose flag would outlive empires, and the sadist so monstrous that even other pirates feared him. In this episode of Mythic Albion, we sail into the Golden Age of Piracy, into storms and cannon fire, into blood-soaked decks and burning horizons. This is the story of the pirates. If there is one pirate that would go on to become a household name, it would be that of Edward Teach, better known as Blackbeard the Pirate. A figure so infamous he ceased to become merely a man and became something that bordered on the supernatural. The period between the 17th and early 18th century was known as the Golden Age of Piracy, and Blackbeard was the most notorious of all pirates during this time. He was a sea robber who played shipping lanes off the North American coastlines and Caribbean shores between 1717 and 1718. There was many a variation of the pronunciation of his name: Edward Thatch, Edward Teach, Thatch and Tack. Genealogical research determined he was named Edward Thatch Jr., born in 1683 Gloucestershire, England. Edward Sr. moved the family to Jamaica, where Blackbeard received an education, was able to read and write, and was trained as a mariner. As many a pirate, Edward Jr. chose a terrifying name and appearance, and thus Blackbeard was born. He came of age during an era of constant warfare, and like many a future pirate, Blackbeard learned violence legally, serving as a privateer during Queen Anne's War. Privateers were in essence state-sanctioned pirates, given permission to raid enemy ships in times of war. But when peace came, thousands of sailors found themselves discarded, unpaid and unwanted, but still very much armed and very much a danger. And thus the transition from privateer to pirate was inevitable. Blackbeard emerged from this chaos, and unlike many a pirate, he understood something crucial. Fear could be more powerful than violence itself. Many a pirate knew the importance of image, and Blackbeard was no exception. A towering figure with a steely frame, as if shaped by the sea air itself. With a wild and unruly beard coming down to his eyes, he resembled something like a lion with jet black mane. He would often tie ribbons into his hair and beard. Before battle, he would adorn himself in black, strapping several pistols to his chest, donning a large black pirate's hat. He would finish this off by putting slow-burning fuses into his hair and beard. With the fuses sputtering and smoking, he was perpetually wrapped in a menacing fog, like a sea devil stepped out of hell and onto a ship. Blackbeard owed a lot of his success to this visage. Many a victim would surrender far in advance at the sight of Blackbeard and his ship. This was good business for Blackbeard, who saw this as a way of acquiring resources while losing none of his own. Blackbeard promised to slaughter those that resisted, but always granted mercy to those that surrendered peacefully, thus helping to spread his reputation. Blackbeard was a master of intimidation, control and psychological warfare. After a year of looting and plundering, Blackbeard went to North Carolina, accepting a pardon from Governor Charles Eden, settling in Bath for a time. He married and the wedding was presided over by the governor. Retirement apparently did not suit Blackbeard, and striking a deal with the governor, he gave over loot for protection. Eden helped Blackbeard look straight, and Blackbeard returned to pirating, sharing his takings, an arrangement that worked well for both men. His greatest prize came when he captured a French slave ship, which he transformed into his infamous flagship, the Queen Anne's Revenge. 40 guns, it was a floating fortress, a black omen that cut through the Atlantic waters. And then came an act that cemented his legend, the blockade of Charleston. In 1718, Blackbeard sailed directly into the American colony's busiest ports and held it hostage. Ships were seized, citizens taken prisoner, and panic became widespread. He did this neither for gold or jewels, but for medicine. An audacious, humiliating act, defying the authority of an empire itself. But legends rarely die peacefully, and the British authorities simply could not allow Blackbeard to continue. Lieutenant Robert Maynard was sent to hunt him down, with the final confrontation that came near Ocracoke Island. On the 22nd of November 1718, Blackbeard was cornered by 2 Royal Navy sloops filled with crews from the HMS Pearl and HMS Lyme. The pirate was caught short, with most of his men on shore at the time, but he decided to fight nonetheless. When his ship was boarded, the British found him standing in the middle of the deck, pistols festooned to his body, a sword in each hand, and smoke curling around him as if trying to pull him back into the morning mist. With a blood-curdling howl, he and his remaining men charged at the British, engaging in brutal close combat. Pistols were fired at point-blank range, steel collided with steel, and the decks became slick with blood. And Blackbeard fought like the very devil that his image projected out, and it took no less than 5 gunshot wounds and over 20 sword injuries to finally bring him down. And even in death, the mythology continued. His head was cut off and fixed to the bowsprit of Maynard's ship as proof of the pirate's demise. His body was thrown into the water, and it was said it swam around the ship 3 times before sinking. While Blackbeard may not have found as much treasure as Henry Avery did, or captured as many ships as his contemporary Black Bart Roberts did, Blackbeard remained an outstanding pirate and was by far and large the most notorious pirate that had ever lived. If ever there was a pirate that was the almost polar opposite of Blackbeard, it was Calico Jack. He was not the most successful pirate, nor the most feared, and not the most brutal either. In fact, his pirate career was relatively short, lasting only 2 years, but it was notable for a variety of reasons. John Rackham was born on Boxing Day 1682 in Bristol, England, beginning his career around 1718 as a quartermaster for the infamous pirate Charles Vane. Vane was known for a harsh and strict discipline aboard his ship, but Rackham learned much under him. In 1719, Vane refused to attack a French warship. Rackham led a mutiny and was elected captain of the ship by the crew. As pirates go, Jack Rackham was something of a revolutionary. He recruited 2 of the most famous female pirates in Bonny and Mary Read, unusual in that women were strictly forbidden from becoming pirates. Jack also exuded a flamboyant look, often adorned in brightly coloured calico clothing, and the name Calico Jack was born. And then there was the flag, the infamous black banner bearing the skull and cross cutlasses, the Jolly Roger. Regarding Bonny and her origins, it was said she was born in Ireland and raised in American colonies. Fierce-tempered and defiant, one story told that she nearly beat a man to death for attempting to force himself upon her. Whether true or not, the tale matched her fierce reputation. She abandoned ordinary life entirely after meeting Rackham, choosing piracy over society itself. Bonny was the illegitimate daughter of an attorney and his servant. Bonny and her father later would move to Carolina, where she married a sailor. At an unknown date, she travelled to the Bahamas, where she became acquainted with pirate Calico Jack. It wasn't long before Anne Bonny and another woman, Mary Read, were serving on a ship with Jack and 13 other men. A somewhat small crew, they specialised in attacking merchant ships off the West Indies. Bonny herself was very active, such as distributing gunpowder to her shipmates and taking part directly in raids. Rather interestingly, Mary Read disguised herself as a man in order to gain entry to Calico Jack and his crew, and struck up a close friendship with Bonny. Anne Bonny took Read for a handsome young fellow and was understood to be most disappointed upon learning that Read was in fact a she. Calico Jack, infuriated about this affair, as he was the lover of Anne Bonny, forced Read to reveal her secret to him. Over the next 2 months, Rackham, Bonny, Read and the rest of the crew terrorised the Caribbean. On the 22nd of August 1720, they stole a sloop in Nassau. The governor of the Bahamas, Woodes Rogers, proclaimed a proclamation for the arrest of Read, and it would seem that Mary Read's identity was not quite as secret as she believed it to be. By October of 1720, the law caught up with Calico Jack and his crew. A privateer known as Jonathan Barnett tracked them down off the coast of Jamaica, where they were drunkenly celebrating a recent payday. Because the men were too intoxicated to defend themselves, legend states that Mary Read and Anne Bonny single-handedly battled Barnett's men on their own, screaming at their male comrades to join in. Wearing men's jackets and long trousers, handkerchiefs around their heads, cursing while brandishing pistols and machetes, they were every match for their male counterparts. However, they were just two. The crew collapsed quickly and Calico Jack was captured and sentenced to be hung. While all the crew were in their cells awaiting punishment, to the further astonishment of everyone, both women were also pregnant. Bonny and Read would remain in prison far longer due to this little fact. Mary Read died behind bars in April 1721, seized with a violent fever, where she was buried in Spanish Town, Jamaica. There was no record of a child, which means she died before birth, or there was no baby ever. Anne Bonny, upon seeing Jack in his cell, was said to say the following to him: "If you had fought like a man, you need not have hanged like a dog." Anne Bonny seemed to disappear from the public record, some believing that she ended up living a full life long after her days as a pirate. Calico Jack faced the gallows on a small island known as Rackham's Cay on the 18th of November 1720. He was just 37 years old. While not the sharpest sword on the seven seas, the flashy captain displayed a bold disposition and a cunning nature, as short-lived as it was. Rackham's legacy is one of bravery and cunning, credited with designing the Jolly Roger flag, synonymous with pirates today, despite his whirlwind 2 years as a swashbuckling buccaneer. If Blackbeard became a devil of legend and Calico Jack a symbol of rebellion, then Edward Lowe represented something else entirely, something colder, because there are some men in history whose cruelty became so extreme that even in an age and time of violence and lawlessness, they stand apart. Born in Westminster, London, sometime in the 17th century, Edward Lowe's early life already carried signs of the brutality that would follow. A thief, a street criminal, a gambler, and a violent young man shaped by poverty and anger. Accounts describe him as a known cheater at games, a robber of law-abiding citizens in the street, beating others simply for insults or amusement. But unlike many men that would turn to piracy through war or desperation, Lowe seemed drawn to the cruelty naturally. He eventually found work aboard ships in December 1721, part of a crew of a British merchant sloop in Honduras. Life at sea was hard. Disease, flogging, starvation and the endless labour beneath the officers who ruled through terror. But even among hardened sailors, Lowe stood out. At some point, Lowe snapped and shot at his captain after a dispute. When the pistol misfired, he seized a ratchet instead. 12 men stood with Lowe, and the mutineers sailed off for a new life of piracy. Sailing to the Cayman Islands, Lowe made an alliance with another pirate group being led by George Lowther. From there, Lowther and Lowe proceeded to raid more ships in the summer of 1722. After their summer of plundering, Lowe and Lowther parted ways, with Lowe preferring easier targets off the coast of North America. Upgrading his ship to an 80-ton schooner, he sailed off for the Caribbean. He easily captured a fleet of 8 merchant ships who capitulated the moment they saw Lowe's pirate flag. Lowe's flag was known as the Trumpet of Death and would depict a blood-red skeleton on a black background. However, it was not enough that Lowe would be able to capture prisoners so effortlessly. He had a reputation for barbarity that bordered on the sadistic. Captives would be tortured to find out locations of secret treasure. But when it came down to the brass tacks of it all, Ned Lowe simply took pleasure from inflicting pain and misery on others. Stories about Lowe were abound. Reports that Lowe and his crew would place burning matches between the fingers of prisoners, making non-lethal knife cuts and relentless floggings. When a French vessel was captured, Lowe allowed everyone to go free but the ship's cook, remarking that the cook looked like a greasy fellow that would fry well on a fire. The man was tied to the mainmast and set alight. A Captain George Roberts was captured off Cape Verde in September 1721. While treated well enough, he observed that the crew were apt to over-drinking, eating like dogs and snatching food from each other's plates. Between December 1722 and January 1723, Lowe and his crew found themselves back at the Caribbean, causing havoc and carnage. Capturing a Portuguese merchant vessel, the master of the ship dumped all the gold into the sea, to the fury of Lowe. Lowe cut off the man's lips and brawled them in front of him before murdering the entire crew. In spring later that year, Lowe, off the coast of Honduras, came across a Spanish ship. Over 60 Spaniards were killed before Lowe set sail for North America again. Lowe's campaign of terror seemed impossible to stop, and the sadistic pirate started to become overtly ambitious. With his 2 ships, Fortune and Ranger, boasting 18 cannons between them, attacked a naval vessel, HMS Greyhound, off the coast of Long Island. This mighty naval vessel could have easily dispatched one of Lowe's ships, but Lowe flanked the naval vessel to get it in a crossfire. The naval crew, well prepared for Lowe, engaged in an 8-hour battle, and the pirate was forced to flee. His second captain, Harris, was captured and hung at Newport, Rhode Island, on July 1723. Lowe seemed to descend into a type of madness. Sailing further north, he began attacking whale sloops. One captured captain had his ears removed, was flogged and then shot to death. Another unfortunate captain was forced to eat his own ears before being shot, and a third captain had his living heart removed and forced another prisoner to eat it. By September of 1723, Lowe was sailing along the coast of West Africa in command of a 34-gun ship and 2 other vessels. In the end, Lowe was not brought to justice by the full extent of the law. Not content with torturing prisoners, he soon started turning on his own crew. Captain Spriggs took one of Lowe's ships and simply abandoned him. Back in the Caribbean by early 1724, Lowe did what he always did, and his crew turned on him, set him adrift, where it was thought he ended his days alone on a desert island. If Edward Lowe represented the madness lurking within piracy, then Bartholomew Roberts represented something far more dangerous: control. Because among all pirates of the Golden Age, none were more successful. Not Blackbeard, or Calico Jack, or Edward Lowe. Black Bart, as Bartholomew Roberts would come to be known as, captured more ships than any other pirates in recorded history. Hundreds, in fact. an empire of theft stretching the Atlantic. However, unlike many other pirates, Roberts never intended to become one. Born in Pembroke County, Wales in 1682, his real first name was John, and John Roberts began his journey on the seas at the age of just 13. So weather-beaten and tanned was he that by the time he became a young man, he garnered the nickname Black Bart. As a young man, Roberts served as second mate on the Princess of London, a slave ship that journeyed between the coasts of West Africa and London. Roberts' foray into piracy came as a result of being captured by pirates. Realising he liked what piracy could give him, he changed his name from John to Bartholomew in order to better avoid the authorities. Having been captured by the Welsh pirate Howell Davis, when he died in an engagement with the Portuguese authorities, the crew instantly elected Black Bart as their new captain. The now Captain Roberts immediately took revenge on the island of Princes, where the Portuguese authorities had been based. He immediately razed it to the ground. Unlike the drunken chaos that pirates were often associated with, Roberts never touched alcohol, drinking nothing stronger than tea. Where other pirates ruled through chaos, Black Bart ruled through discipline. Strict rules governed his ships, gambling was restricted, lights extinguished at set hours, no women allowed on board, order maintained through codes agreed upon by the crew. Piracy was an arena of lawlessness, yet Roberts used that to his advantage. Captains were elected, loot distributed according to agreed shares, compensation paid out for injuries suffered in battle, a brutal but floating democratic empire. Roberts was a charismatic leader of men and hugely successful in acquiring plunder to share. Pirates may be seen as dim-witted brutes, but they knew a good thing when they saw it. He dressed magnificently in silks and jewellery. Rich coats were captured from vessels. Even as cannon smoke rolled around him, he would walk the deck during battle wearing crimson waistcoats and gold chains. But beneath the refinement was ruthless ambition. Not content with one ship, he captured 11 off the West African coast in January 1722. Roberts commanded the most powerful of all pirate ships, the Royal Fortune, which boasted at least 40 cannons. His most famous banner showed him with a sword standing on two skulls. Under the skulls were the initials ABH and AMH, signifying the heads of the governors of Barbados and Martinique, both whom had sent ships in pursuit of Roberts. Preferring to sail on powerful warships, the Royal Fortune was a moniker he recycled several times, dependent on the current ship he was captaining. From early 1721, he sailed the Onslow, which unsurprisingly was also renamed the Royal Fortune, and this would be the fourth and last ship to undergo such a change. The ship was stripped down to allow space for 40 entire cannons. There were strict rules and a code on Black Bart's ships. To keep their peace, pistols and cutlasses clean and fit for service. No boy or woman to be allowed. If any man is found seducing any of the latter sex and carries her to sea, disguised, he is to suffer death. To desert the ship or their quarters in battle is punished with death or marooning. Every man has a vote in affairs of moment, has equal title to the fresh provisions of strong liquors at any time seized, and may use them at pleasure, unless a scarcity makes it necessary for the good of all to vote a retrenchment. No person to game at cards or dice for money. The musicians to have rest on the Sabbath day. On the 10th of February 1722, Roberts finally met his end. The Royal Fortune got into a protracted battle with the Royal Navy frigate HMS Swallow off the coast of Cape Lopez. Captain Challoner Ogle had been pursuing Roberts for months, and during the cannon fight, Roberts caught a stray piece of shrapnel to the throat and was killed. As per instructions to his men, his body was tossed overboard in the eventuality that should he ever be killed, to prevent his body being used to be hung as a public spectacle. Ogle's men won after a 3-hour-long battle, and 268 pirates were captured. Roberts' crew consisted of 77 black slaves who had fought as pirates. They were all returned to slavery. 52 of Roberts' crew were hanged in sight of the walls of Cape Coast Castle, Guinea, the largest public execution of pirates in the Golden Age of Piracy. Another 20 men were sent to eventually die, doing hard labour in West Africa on a penal colony. Captain Ogle received a knighthood for his efforts, ending his career as an admiral. Black Bart's sinking to the bottom of the ocean was fitting, because he belonged to the sea more than the land. Firm but fair, a man who discovered that beyond the reach of kings and empires, another kind of kingdom could exist, if not briefly, and then vanish beneath the waves. If you liked today's episode, please be sure to leave a like and review. It helps other salty sea dogs find their ways back to the reliable trade routes. And so, the age of piracy slowly began to die. The great empires tightened their grip upon the oceans, navies expanded, trade routes hardened, and one by one, the black flags disappeared beneath the horizon. Some pirates were hunted down and hanged, their bodies left swinging in iron cages beside the sea, warnings to all who might follow. Others vanished entirely, swallowed by storms, by battle, and by the endless waters that they had once ruled. And yet the pirates never truly disappeared, because history transformed them. Men who were once feared as thieves and murderers became legends. Symbols of freedom, of rebellion, of life beyond the rules of civilization. But perhaps that transformation says more about us than it does about them, because deep down the pirate represents something ancient, the desire to escape, to step beyond the structures of the world of law and order, to reject kings, nations and sovereignty, and answer only to the horizon itself. But there is another side to that freedom, a much darker side, because once law disappears, something else can emerge in its place. And whether upon the sea or upon the land, Britain has always carried story of what waits beyond the boundaries of ordinary life. Stories of strange things appearing in the night, of the impossible intruding upon the familiar, of signs that people could not explain and therefore feared. Because long after pirates vanished, other mysteries emerged across England. Such as the winter of 1855, a heavy snowfall across Devon, the locals finding something impossible. A trail of hoof prints stretching for miles, crossing rooftops, walls, fields and rivers, always in a straight line, as though something had walked across the countryside under the cover of darkness. For many there could only be one explanation. The devil himself had walked the land. But the devil has always been ever present in British folklore, in old tales whispered through isolated villages, with temptation, offering bargains for impossible labour in exchange for a terrible price, mowing the impossible into fields. Next time on Mythic Albion, we shall look at how the devil, sometimes known as Old Nick, has featured with alarming curiosity in our folklore, shaping the landscape, moving churches or being outsmarted by passing saints. Until then, sail wisely upon those open seas, and beware the glimpse of the Jolly Roger flag high above the not so distant horizon.